All right, folks. I came across something really, really interesting that I need to share with you because we've heard a lot about the price targets, and everybody and each one of us has its own price target in mind. And I made numerous videos where I give you my approach around what I see when it comes to which is the highest price you should sell, which is the highest price I should have start having, thinking about my exit strategy, or which is the highest it could hit based on several circumstances, several scenarios happening in the market, in the company, in the stock itself, from a short squeeze thing, etc., etc., etc. But there is something else that came in here because we do have the famous what we call the FTDs. The FTDs are the fail to delivers. Fail to delivers are so high when it comes to AMC stock that nobody really has an answer. But on the back of that, we have the option volume or the option chain, which is kind of, intermixed with the fail to deliver. Because the bottom line is whenever the price of the stock is closing above a certain level, especially when it's option closure time, they are supposed to have some sort of buying pressure coming from the market makers, those companies who are setting these options, and from, and the retail investors or whoever is buying those options should have some, how to put it, advantages, all right, some benefits. But those benefits are not coming from those market makers, from those companies, and that is what is kind of piling up and have been piling up for the last, I don't know, 1 year or two. And now it's so worst that there is no way around this not creating another chaos, which ultimately is a big catalyst for the share price to jump. Now, the question is, how high can it jump? This is precisely the point of this video, folks, because if we look at this few scenarios, all right, this is something I got from a fellow ape. And he said, hey, apes, there are about 100 million legal shares on loan, right? That we already know. Just look at, Artex or S3 Partners. I did some calculations to come up with the realistic AMC share price when all the legal shares are returned. My calculations for the legal shares on loan were returned first. Here it goes. So scenario number one. AMC share price jumped from $35 to $72 with 30 million legal shares returned on June 2nd. That is what we saw back, when AMC hit $72. Now, on the back of this, so this is the baseline. Using this, given the fact that, we're using 30 million legal shares that were being returned, pushing the share price from 35 to 72 on the same, the same lines. If 60 million shares are being returned, the share price will go to 109. Now, still keeping the same logic, right? Still keeping the same logic. If now we have 90 million shares being returned, the share price should jump to $146 a share. Now, if all of the 100 million shares, legal shares, not the fake, the legal shares on loan that are currently being used now by the shorts are returned, obviously in the midst of the short squeeze, then the share price should technically be about 160 a piece. Now, he estimated there are about 3 billion synthetic shares. The estimate is low, but this is coming from, the lawyer, Mr. Wes Christian, who was thinking something way bigger than this. We're talking about something between 9 and 26 billion shares in total being fake, the synthetics, all right? But there may be more. Nobody knows, except those who created these shares. Now, based on the same logic and these calculations, if the 3 billion synthetic shares are returned, and covering and buying back and everything, AMC share price will be about $7,200 a share. If now it's 9 billion synthetics are being returned or covered, the share price will jump to $21,600 a share. Now, if we have the whole 26, which is the max, Wes Christian's the lawyer is thinking, and there is really no way, as I mentioned earlier, if it's not the hedges themselves who created these synthetics, nobody else can really know, all right? Because most of these, or even every of these shares, are being traded and used in a place where nobody has access to, including the regulators. So if the whole 26 billion shares are now being covered, normally the share price will go to $62,208 a share. Now, you ask me, well, let's see, what's the likelihood? What is the, what are the chances? What is the probability, realistic probability for any of these scenarios to happen? Now, what we need to keep in mind is when AMC went from $35 to $72 a share on June 2nd, that famous June 2nd, all right? The buying pressure then was way lower than the current buying pressure. I saw, the chart with the volume in terms of, the buying pressure then and now, and it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense now that we have a lot more buying pressure because people are still holding and buying, retail and institutionals. It doesn't make sense that the share price will be even lower than 30. Absolutely no sense. But, nothing with the AMC makes sense, of course. Now, that being said, my point is, if the buying pressure is a lot more higher, all right, and we have billions of synthetic shares being, out there, nobody knows exactly the amount. Let's just take a minute, step back a little bit, and try to have a conservative or kind of, median scenario. Meaning, if we take the 100 million shares now being used by the shorts, not even thinking these synthetics, all right? If we take only 1 billion shares synthetics, all right? We can estimate that when you take into consideration the covering, the fear of missing out, and some buyback coming from the company, and possibly everything else that we know as catalyst, then we are thinking about a minimum or maybe 30 hundreds, like 3,000 to 5,000, maybe to, 1,500 a minimum. 1,500 a minimum, which is not quite surprising because fundamentally speaking, just looking at the law of supply and demand, just looking at the amount of people buying and selling and holding, worldwide, it does make sense that AMC naturally right now at this current time, point in time, should be trading around $1,500 a share. Not even counting these crazy numbers, all right? So I will let you take your own, conclusion to this whole thing, because the point for me was just to share and see how it can make sense, all of these scenarios. I'm not personally expecting it to hit the biggest number prior to selling because I know the shenanigans happening here. I've been here for, almost more than 2 years. So I don't want to be dumb. I want to be realistic because I'm hoping for the best, but I'm also getting prepared for the worst. That's why we all need to have an exit strategy. Now, let me know in the comment section, based on these scenarios, which is the highest number you think AMC can go if we have these scenarios happening and turning into reality? And to which number would you hold? Let me know, please.